Hello, everyone.
Hi.
Welcome to Cerulean Arts Gallery for today's tour and talk of the latest collective exhibition. So this group of work features Pia di Girolamo, Alan Lankin, Alice Lesnick, Michael Smith, and Christine Stoughton. We're going to have a gallery tour first. We're going to do a walkthrough, and then each artist will speak about their work. And then we're going to open the breakout rooms so you can meet with them individually and talk to them about their work as well. I'd ask that you stay muted during the walkthrough. And you should know that we are open. We are open from Wednesday through Friday, 10 to 6, Saturday and Sunday, 12 to 6. So if you're so inclined, you can come down and see the show in person. We limit the occupancy and everyone has to wear a mask when they come. And you can also see all the work on the gallery website. So I'm going to put that in the chat for you. And you can see everything there, and you can even purchase on the website. We ship and you can also pick up. So we try to make it easy for you. The show is up through February 7th. So are we ready? So what I'm going to do is spotlight the video, if I can find it. Let's see here. Oops. Okay. So I'm spotlighting Tina's camera. She's going to start the walkthrough. And the first artist we're going to visit is Pia. So we're just heading down the aisle here. Sometimes it takes a second or two to focus, so if you'll bear with us. So Pia, would you like to introduce yourself and talk about your work? This is a very particular series of work.
Sure. So my name is Pia di Girolamo, and I titled this series 78 Degrees North, 16 Degrees East, the Arctic series. And before that, I'd really like to thank everyone for coming. It's great to see so many people here. Anyway, so those are latitude and longitude numbers. That's a location that is assigned to Svalbard, which is an archipelago above the Arctic Circle. It's administered by Norway, not owned by, but just administered by Norway. And it's one of the gateways for visitors to explore the Arctic. And in May of 2019, I went on a cruise, an educational cruise, with my husband and friends, some of whom are on this Zoom call. And we explored this marvelous, marvelous place. It's funny to me, I purposely put 78 degrees north, 16 degrees east, indicating this place on our planet. But really, when I was there, it felt like I was on another planet, another world. This place is so unique, with its own light, where the sun, at least at that time of year, never set. Its own unique shapes of ice and mountains, very sculptural. The animals that just fit right into that landscape. It was really remarkable, and every day was a day of awe and wonder. However, what might be unseen is the history of this place, this unique place. Even though it looked pristine, it actually has an often violent history dating back centuries, when the whaling industry decimated populations of whales to the point where many have not recovered. And to the present day, where climate change has decreased habitat, shrunk habitat for some of the animals, like that polar bear you saw, and actually has produced some of the first rains in the area. One of them, or the main town or village, I should say, on Svalbard is Longyearbyen, and they saw rain for the first time last year, and there were some landslides above the village. Houses had to be moved. So it's a beautiful place, but you're conscious of this, this history that makes it a little bit, that makes it poignant. But while I was there, I did a lot of sketching on site with a small notebook. And of course I had pictures, photos. My husband took lots of photos, my friends. And then when I got back to the studio, these are trappers' huts, by the way, that you're looking at. When I go back to the studio, I started synthesizing the images and the memories. And really the painting started flowing, and I started using different techniques, and it really was great. It just jump-started this series. But unfortunately, the pandemic hit, and we were on lockdown, and you know, we've all experienced it one way or another. And for me, it was interesting that what I was working on, actually, many of the themes resonated with what I was feeling about the lockdown, you know, the isolation of the Arctic, the sort of lonely vistas. The trappers' huts, for example, were not just trappers' huts anymore. They were sort of symbols of our disconnection. The animals looking into like a research station, for example, in this painting, or looking at a distant cruise ship, like the one that brought me there. You know, they were wondering, what is this invasion about? Like we were wondering, you know, about this virus invading. It's funny, I say this now, but as I was working, these things were subconscious. They didn't hit me until kind of as I was really into this series. And this is, I think, one series for me where the initial images, the initial experience became overlaid with another layer of meaning, which was my response to the pandemic. Being in the studio was a great comfort to me, and it really helped me get through that part of the lockdown. Anyway, this is for me a very unique series because of that. It reflecting a place, emotions that I experienced in the place, and then the response to what was going on back in my quote unquote real life back home. So I'm very glad to have had this opportunity to put this series together, to show it at Cerulean, and to have all of you enjoy it with me. Thank you.
So these are oils, correct, Pia?
No, actually I work in acrylic.
Oh, how about that?
These are all acrylic, and I use different media to create different textures or effects. And yeah, so these are all acrylic.
Because you get a very beautiful surface. And
Yeah.
it's like a translucent creamy that is quite lovely. I mean, how is that something you're aiming for? Like,
yeah. Yes, it's something that over, you know, with working with acrylics now for many, many years and trying different media and different techniques, I like to achieve, you know, sometimes a more matte, sometimes a little bit more translucent. And again, it's based on, you know, some of the traditional, like, for example, glazing. I mean, glazing can be done with acrylics, you know, layers layers of paint of different thicknesses. And some things are a little bit more textured. I can add different media there, and some things a little more washy. It depends on, you know, I really don't necessarily follow a particular formula. It's kind of what the painting calls for, if that sounds, you know, what it feels, what I feel it needs as I'm working with it. But yeah, there, and then at the end, I do put a very light coat of a satin varnish, but that's just as a protection. And already there is that translucency or that sense of, you know, light and layering because of the many layers of paint that I've put on.
Thank you, Pia.
Thank you.
So now we'll continue on to Alice Lesnick's gallery.
Thank you, Mike and Tina, and good afternoon, everyone. Thanks for coming. And Pia, your work is really beautiful.
Thank you very much.
I'm happy to sort of introduce some of my paintings to you. I told them to wash their hands and faces and get ready for company. There are some paintings in the group here today that are part of a series that I'm calling Angels Recur. I'm interested in angels as messengers, or I'm really interested in messages from sort of what's beneath what Mindell calls consensus reality. So sometimes in painting, I find my way to such a message and to the celebration of encounters with experience that encountering experience anew, I guess. So these are some of those messengers. I'm also going to be showing you some paintings that are from a series where I was exploring what happens when a boulder is in my path. So sort of confronting obstacle. And that's, of course, a joy to do in painting, because the paint makes for obstacle and makes for pleasure in the working through. So the trouble and the pleasure and the working through in life and in paint sort of swerve with each other in a way that is fun and interesting to do, and raises the possibility that shifting scale or shifting color or view, whether starting to look up at a boulder or down at a boulder, sort of changes its power as an obstacle. So I'm interested in power in different senses, which leads to an interest in circus sometimes, like this painting recollects circus. I don't have personal recollections of circus, but I find circus to be a really sort of powerful site of creativity and marginality and movement and risk. And those are things that interest me and that painting helps seed an interest in. And then movement also comes through sometimes like dance. And that's partly because I'm the mother of a dancer, and I've had the pleasure of watching really wonderful ballet and modern dance for many years. So that's present. I think the sort of relishing of movement, just as a way of loving life, is present in some of these paintings. And then I guess I would also say there's an interest in poetry and language, so which is also shared with the other daughter that I'm a mother to, that sort of the movement of words, or getting words to move out of their fixities and out of repeating the same things, but into some new experiences. So sometimes in painting and in titling paintings, I'm playing with words in a way that allows a sort of softer and also deeper engagement than academic language is often inviting. Yeah. And then sometimes like this, it's sort of like I want to make a painting of everything. So there are a couple of paintings I call kitchen sink paintings. Instead of having to paint, I don't want to paint one thing or another. I don't want to see if I can do it, but sometimes I want just to have everything there, and I'm very delighted if that happens.
Alice, how do you start these? Are you working from imagination, any reference, or do you just sort of launch into it?
I work from imagination. Well, sometimes I work from like a question or just a feeling, like a feeling into a trouble in the world, or a trouble in my development, or sometimes an image, a sort of abstract image is in my mind. Like I want to do something with a diamond, or I get a starting image of like some drippy lines. And so I start with that, and then almost immediately I'm into trouble. I get into trouble there, and then it's sort of a Q&A with the painting.
And are you working on multiple at the same time?
Oh, sometimes two. And some of these are the work of a day, and some of these are the work of many returns over the course of days or months. And I don't think any of these have years in them, but sometimes, yeah.
That's great. Thank you, Alice.
Thank you.
So now we're heading into Christine Stoughton's gallery. Christine?
Yes. Hi, everyone. Welcome. And thank you, P and Alice. I titled this series Connection, Disconnection. So every work that was chosen to be shown here has to do with the universal dilemma that we've all been dealing with over the past year, which is how to stay connected in a very disconnected world. My interest in all my art has always been capturing impermanence and honoring change. And one way I do that is, for example, in the Bridging the Void, the ladder piece that's hanging on the wall, is by capturing shadows. And the shadows change. So even though you have a static piece of art, as the light changes, it becomes alive, it becomes activated because the shadows move with the light. So I very much view these sculptural pieces as drawings in space, and the shadows are an intricate part of the work. The piece below it that Tina was just looking at is my version of Sleeping Beauty. It's a mixed media piece. It's clearly inspired by looking at self-taught and outsider artists such as Joseph Cornell. It is a contained environment, but inside is plexiglass. So when you look inside, you get a much more expanded view because the reflections go on forever. The back of the piece, the drawing, and behind that is lights. So at night it lights up. It's like stars in the sky. And the inside is filled with thorn branches and like barbed wire. And hanging in the back is a mirror. So when you explore this piece, what you discover is yourself. So the symbolism behind the piece is that once you make the journey towards self-awareness, that you will awaken your own sleeping beauty. And this is a piece I'm very attached to. It has a lot of meaning for me. I am a psychologist and a teacher by training. So focusing on self-awareness and change and learning comes through in, I think, all my work. The piece below here is called Web, and it literally is spider webs that have been picked up, and a lot of my work is very experimental. I like working with different materials, experimenting with different materials. I've always been fascinated by spider webs. And so I was working on that piece in the studio and scraping off some micro beads from another piece I was working on and burnt wood. And they literally adhered to the cobweb that was on the floor. And I thought, oh, wow, I can use this. So I took those and applied them and then added silk threads and drawing and other aspects. The piece above that is a tea bag piece. It started my tea bag series, which was inspired by seeing a beautiful tapestry at the Pennsylvania Museum of Art that was very translucent and was used in tea bags, in tea ceremonies. So I started experimenting with printing on tea bags and using the stain to enhance the images, and then I collaged these different images together. And those are all, it's called winter notations, because they're little sketches about winter. The piece next to it is called Native Halo. And as my sister pointed out to me today, she said that if I had grown up in Paris, my art would be very different. The choice of materials would be very different. But I grew up in Tulsa, Oklahoma. And she and I played with sticks and rocks as part of our creative play. And it clearly still remains with me. So that's another piece that has a lot of shadow interplay with it. This is called Caught. It's a monotype, and it was inspired by seeing a piece of garbage, a piece of plastic stuck to a just weeds. These are, this is called Triptych, and it's made using, it's a drawing that's done made with micro beads and burnt wood that's been treated by seawater, as well as regular charcoal and graphite. And it's very much about experimenting with the texture of this highly textured paper that I used. This is called just Glass Houses, and it certainly deals with the question of disconnection. And I think the coldness of it, the precariousness of these glass houses, the vulnerability of them, they're in skeletal forms, speaks to, you know, the divisions and how vulnerable we are given the divisions in our country right now. This one on the left is called Crossing Borders, and it was inspired by the material of the paper, plus what's been going on in our country for the past 4 years. So I basically deconstructed a highly fibrous paper and then used the fibers with graphite and charcoal to make the image. The central sculpture is called Lyrical Ladder. I do like using ladders and bridges as a metaphor for moving from one space to another, from one level of awareness to another level of awareness. The piece above it is Creation, and it's homage to Michelangelo. And certainly, I didn't set out to be doing a commentary on the Sistine Chapel, but when I saw the energy that was going between the electric lines in this piece, it absolutely reminded me of that the energy between God and Adam that we imagine when we look at the Sistine Chapel. These are two monotypes. The one on the left is a dark field monotype. The one on the right is a light field monotype. And they were made by constructing these objects out of used dryer cloths from my dryer, because I love the fibrous, the very fine lines that are in the cloths, and they held the ink well, and so they were used in the inking and creation of these works. And the knots certainly reference connecting. This is called, I forget, Moving Across or something. Oh, Finding a Way. This is Finding a Way. And again, it is done by inking and printing a lot of different fibers. These two pieces, the one on top is called Strung Along One, and it was inspired initially by just seeing birds on a wire, a huge flock of birds on a telephone wire. And the one below it, I just call Green and White. It is a collage of a monotype. This is a different monotype. It's called Dancing Across. And for those of you who don't know what monotypes are, basically it's where you paint on a flat surface and then on a non-absorbent surface, and then you put paper on top and you put it through a printing press, or you hand print it to transfer the image from the surface to the paper. This is part of my tea bag series. And again, it's winter notations. And I have to say, all the tea bags that I used in my work, and I've got several that I've done, were donated by friends. So for a year, I would come home and I would have a basket of tea bags sitting on my front porch that people were giving to me. And so these are very intimate pieces. I have a lot of connection with my friends through these works. This is called Blowing in the Wind, and it was very much done this year and about my escape, trying to escape all that was going on, and to my favorite spot on Cape Cod. So this started out as a huge drawing, and then got edited and collaged and put back together in a very different format to get what I wanted, which was the sense of movement. And also, you know, at this time, all the Black Lives Matter demonstrations were going on. And I was listening to Bob Dylan, and he was singing, you know, "The answer, my friend, is blowing in the wind." And it just seemed perfect, for a perfect title for what we were all experiencing. So thank you, Mike and Tina, for hanging it so beautifully.
Well, thank you, Christine. It's fantastic.
Thank you.
Okay, now we're heading into Michael Smith's gallery. Michael?
Yes, hello.
What say ye of?
Okay, well, I want to thank everybody for coming today. I'm just looking at the list of our participants, and it's kind of overwhelming. I guess I had some reservations at first to see like how this would go, and this is just pretty nice to see. Getting people from all over the country, and even friends in France are joining us today. So it's quite touching. So I thank everybody. I especially thank you guys, because Mike and Tina, who have to do, you know, most of the heavy lifting and have to explain technology to us artists. But anyways, the work that I'm showing right now is, for me, pretty recent. I think the oldest I have one painting from 2018. So things are pretty current for as fast as I make work. And I'm showing basically 3 series. So as Tina goes around the room, the very first painting that we had was actually, because obviously we're all spending so much time at home. There's a painting from my front porch. And I was just sitting out there with my dogs and Tina, my wife, and we just spent most of our summer or our downtime on the front porch. And so I always kind of work from sketches. I have small sketchbooks that I take with me, you know, when I do travel. They're just things that I make notations in. And so most of my work will start from a small reference point of a sketch, and just a line sketch in a very small notebook. And so these line sketches are sketched over and over again, and then they ultimately become a more formal work, such as these paintings. But this particular series that Tina is running through right now is kind of what I'd call sort of particular place series, and it actually fits in between the 2 other series that I have here. And so by a particular place, I'm sort of thinking of a place and then making sort of memory images in my sketchbook about these places. And then I have old and new imagery that I've been working with for years. And as I was sort of thinking about getting ready to talk about the work today, a lot of this has been going on for me for probably 35 years now. And that's, for me, kind of mind-blowing to think that I would have been making things that kind of all relate to each other in some way for about 35 years. This particular series here, because obviously none of us are able to really go anywhere, our friends Francine and Steve have a house down in the Chesapeake, and they invited, you know, Tina and I and our dogs to come down to spend some time over the summer. And so that was a great getaway for us, otherwise being homebound. And we had a second floor bedroom, and every day we would wake up to these scenes of which were an old community, and kind of very simple homes, and then a slight view of the bay. And so I would wake up every morning and I would just look out the window and I would see these homes. And, you know, honestly, I've never done any particular work that's been so referential to a particular place. It's either been a collection of memory images, you know, long afterwards. These were really from the place. And it kind of surprised me that I would be making work about a particular place as close as this. And maybe it's the whole COVID thing of us really appreciating those times where we can leave our homes. but the Chesapeake series grew out of that. And initially it was just one painting, and I thought it was going to be a one-off, and then it turned into 4 paintings. And so I'm very pleased to be showing all 4 of them, and that's where they came from. And so this group here is the Palm Springs series, and this was really pre-COVID. My friend Charlie, who's joining us today, lives in Los Angeles, and we went out to visit Charlie, and we spent some time with him, but we'd always wanted to go to Joshua Tree. And so we included Palm Springs as an overnight. And honestly, I can't say I really thought about Palm Springs one way or the other. I sort of knew a little bit about it as being sort of the home away from Hollywood, from movie stars and things like that. And Elvis hung out there for a while, but I never really gave it any thought. But Tina, my wife, got us an overnight at a beautiful little lodge. And once we got there, the whole scenery was just so striking to me. You know, Joshua Tree also left a lasting impression on me. And I did a bunch of sketches when I was there, and the things that really stuck with me was just sort of the starkness of the landscape. And then this mid-century modern subdivisions that we ran into that for me were totally unexpected. And so this is a case where I may not have made any sketches on site, which is kind of how I tend to work. I will come back home, and then through memories, I will draw in my sketchbook and come up with compositions that I think, oh, I could see this becoming something more than a sketch. And so a lot of the sketches just are sketches. And when it comes to making a painting, I might look at 3 or 4 sketches and then turn that into something more formal that I'll spend time on. But this series is really all about the mid-century modern homes in Palm Springs. And then the really stark, really desert landscape, or for me, I hardly ever get to look to the far off horizon because we're all sort of hemmed in by other things, buildings and other homes. But when you're out there, it's just so amazing. So that really hung with me and really inspired this whole Palm Springs series. There's a series of 10 in the Palm Springs series. I'm showing 6 in this particular show. And so knowing that I had space limitations, I chose 6 of the 10 to show in this. But the others are on my website, or they'll be accessible through the galleries if you're interested. But that's how that came to be. And so really 3 series, the Chesapeake series from a particular place in time over the summer. And then these other works that kind of set in the middle between the 2 series. For me, this particular piece here was a piece that once I got I felt like the Palm Springs series had run its course after doing 10 paintings. I needed to find a bridge to something else. And so I look at this particular painting as kind of that bridge. I was still using some of the same things that I use in most of my paintings, but it was no longer about Palm Springs. It was about sort of particular places. And a lot of these really come from a bunch of different drawings. And so, but they're using sort of iconography that I've used in the past. And some of this iconography is quite old. Some of it is really new. Things that I really enjoy about making the work of sort of my sensibilities is that I like balance. I like when things feel kind of weighted and settled. I like when things join up. And so I often look at things in the foreground and try to find a reason for them to make sense in the background. And so I find a way to build a composition where things feel balanced and connected. And sometimes I get a sense of ease with the symmetry of it all too. There's always been a sense for me when I make work of almost a stage set. And I haven't seen a lot of plays, but when I go see a play, I'm almost more interested in the stage sets than what's going on stage. This idea of having things that are really flat, this make-believe world that's happening in front of you, and the craftsmanship that happens and when things move on stage. It's all relatively flat, but yet it's always been very intriguing to me. Things like graphic design. I've never wanted to be a graphic designer, but I've always liked sort of this flat association of shapes and colors. I was trained as a printmaker a long time ago. I went to school as a printmaker, thought I was going to be an illustrator, but that never worked out. I never really liked all the deadlines and all the commercial side of illustration. So a lot of the flatness really comes from my initial training as a printmaker, where for me, a lot of things were very graphic. And I don't make prints that much anymore because I just don't have access to a shop. So a lot of that sensibility has transferred over into my drawings and paintings. So that's it.
Thank you, Michael.
Thank you.
Now we're on to Alan Lankin. Alan?
Hello, yeah, I'm Alan Lankin. Thanks for coming here. It's a big group of people. Some people couldn't get in, I saw, because you reached the 100 limit.
Sorry about that.
But I'm showing here a group of works on paper and also acrylic on canvas. And these obviously are on paper. They're mixed media. Some of them use collage, such as this one. And most of these are either finished or started in the year 2000, 2020, I'm sorry, last year. It's a new year. But like I'm sure most of you, it was a little hard focusing during the pandemic because of all that was going on. But I was lucky that my studio is in my house, so I didn't have to travel, and had a little more trouble working on paintings, but the works on paper were a little easier to grasp, both physically and metaphorically. And my work that I was showing before at Cerulean was there were abstract paintings that had a loose geometric grid, but were kind of architectural. And these are still, some of those are more architectural, but others have more nature coming in, maybe because being inside, I've thought about being outside more, so I've imagined being in the landscape. And these, I work improvisationally. I start with something and maybe a color, or in case of works on paper, I may draw something or put a shape down, and then gradually evolve things. And some of these take months to do, because I may work on something, put it aside, and then come back to it. So there's a lot of things either I'm working on at once or kind of doing some work and then coming back to it later. And I like kind of layering things, and I like drawing in color, which you can see like on this painting. Let's see. And here's some works on paper. I think the one on the left is the collage, and the two others are not collage. I use watercolor, crayon, pen, ink, gouache, acrylic. I tear up old paintings and that I don't like, and reuse pieces of them. Acrylic markers sometimes. So it's kind of fun to just try different materials. Here's another painting. And I didn't feel like I was getting much work done, but I was kind of just doing it and not paying attention too much to what was resulting or the number resulting. So I was kind of pleased that I had enough work to show here. And I want to, these are some more paintings. These are a little more architectural in nature, although they're pretty organic too. You know, maybe they're post-civilization, I don't know, or pre-civilization.
The large ones are acrylic, right, Alan?
Yes, that's right. Yeah, the paintings are acrylic. And this is the largest painting on the right. It's probably the most recent that I finished. It was kind of sitting around for months in a terrible state, and then I kind of figured some things out, and I think it's finished.
Are you sure?
It is for now. I don't know. I might come in with some paint and do something. I heard that Bernard used to do that. He'd go in with a tube of yellow and touch up some paintings in a show.
That's why we don't allow anyone in during the installation.
I don't know how you install all these works in this period of time. I think you have elves or something helping you. And I'm impressed at how beautifully you've hung my show and all the other artists' show. It's really lovely.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Alan.
Thank you. Thank you, Mike and Tina.
And thank you to all the artists.